Welcome back to the Transform Final Conference. We are in the last session of this two-day event, and we are very glad and honored to have four inspiring speakers because they will share their initiatives, their practices in involving citizens and multi-stakeholder actors in co-designing activities and policies, key European policies connected to research and innovation or connected or involving cities and regions. So really close to the aim and objective of our project. We will start with a round of presentation by the speakers, and then we will have a short round table with questions from me, but of course also from you, the audience, in person here in Milan, but also online. You can ask also and comment to the speakers some questions for clarifications after each presentation, and yeah, then we will have this general roundtable. I would like to start with the first speaker here in Milan, Anna Renkamp from Bertelsmann Stiftung. I'm not sure that my pronunciation is correct. Anna will tell us more about European democracy, citizens' participation and the role of regions and cities, the EU Committee of the Regions, Bertelsmann Stiftung project. Welcome, Anna.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to this really great conference and very inspiring conference. I learned a lot about citizen science, so it was very, very interesting. And I'm happy to be here in this great surrounding. I never hold a speech in such a nice atmosphere. So, yeah, I'm working for the Bertelsmann Stiftung. That's a German foundation. And I'm leading the project Democracy and Participation in Europe. Since 2011, I have been working on the topic of citizens' participation. I'm engaged in developing new participation formats like digital citizens dialogues or European citizens panels, as well as providing support and training for key players in administration and politics. So today I'm talking about this project that the Bertelsmann Stiftung did with the European Committee of the Regions in the context of the conference on the future of Europe. And you might know in 2021 and 22 has the EU carried out, as I think, its biggest experiment in democracy, the conference on the future of Europe. European cities from all over Europe were invited to contribute to with ideas to the future of Europe. It was a very complex process with European citizens panels, with many national, regional, local citizens dialogues, and also with online contributions. All results were fed in a multilingual online platform, and representatives from the EU institutions, national governments, and parliaments, social partners, civil society organizations, all were involved. And in the end, it produced a large number of recommendations in key areas for the future of Europe. So from climate change, about health, about economy, as well as digitalization and democracy. The aim of our project. So in this framework, our project with the core took place when we met our colleagues in spring 2021. It was clear to us that this conference was a fantastic opportunity to develop Europe's more towards a participatory democracy. And not only at the European level, but also at regional and local level. And with our project, from local to European, we wanted not another communication exercise. We wanted to achieve impact and real contribution from citizens in shaping the future of Europe. And we wanted to be inclusive. Not only the pro-European usual suspects should participate, but regular citizens from all walks of life. From April 21 to March 22, we conducted 23 projects in 69 regions and cities. 16 projects were transnational, 7 local and regional projects. 38 citizens' dialogues took place with around 2,000 citizens and 200 key players from politics and administrations. Most of the dialogues were conducted with randomly selected citizens, and the dialogues were conducted by the citizens and regions themselves, mainly by local authorities and regional governments. And the European Committee of the Regions supported technically, and the Bertelsmann Stiftung, so me and my colleague, we supported with participatory expertise. And after the 23 examples of citizens' participation, it's safe to say that we really collected comprehensive experience and feedback that underlines just how essential high-quality, deliberative, and inclusive citizen participation is. I mean, you know it already, I think, but all the people they were involved, they really didn't know that from the beginning. So it was a procedure. Today, I would like to introduce you to the findings based on the questions: why involve regular citizens in EU policymaking? How did we involve the citizens, and what did we learn in order to strengthen citizens' participation? So, why involve regular citizens in EU policymaking? No matter what the topic was, the inclusive citizens' dialogues led to high-quality results. The citizens came up with 400 proposals on the different topics of the conference. They mainly worked on the topics stronger economy and climate change. For example, the twin towns Munich and Bordeaux conducted a dialogue about digital transformation with respect to mobility, or the cross-border dialogue between Western Macedonia, Central Macedonia, and Skopje in Greece held a dialogue about challenges and cooperation on environmentally friendly touristic developments and offers. And the initiators of the dialogues choose the topics that were relevant for policymaking at EU level, but as well relevant at local and regional level. And there was always a clear focus. The topics were, let's say, at a medium level of concretization. So not too general, not too specific, somewhere in the middle with a clear focus. Because of the diverse composition of the groups, a plurality of experiences and opinions were discussed, and the proposals occurred as well-balanced and applicable. The proposal showed that European citizens think locally and European. They enjoyed exchanging ideas about Europe with their European neighbors. Citizens want more out of Europe and more unified solutions at EU level. For example, they wanted to the establishment of a uniform European recycling system. So your results on waste could be transferred maybe at European level. Or they wanted uniform rules for teleworking and home office. Policymakers were highly interested in the innovative ideas and proposals and the citizens' perspective, which is quite understandable because everyday experiences, everyday knowledge and assessments of ordinary citizens are important for good politics. After all, political developments are about finding good political solutions that have the chance of broad acceptance and support among the population. Diverse citizens groups represent the diversity of a society and are therefore an important complement to the participation of experts, stakeholders, and interest groups. We have also experienced that a mixed group of citizens can discuss very constructively and find compromises on conflictual issues. Policymakers were often surprised about the constructive discussions. One detected sometimes the citizens are more reasonable than politicians and stakeholders. We know that this is because of the random selected citizens. They do not have fixed positions when they enter the dialogue. They are more open to find compromises and solutions that everybody in the group supports. Another experience with inclusive citizens' participation was about empowerment. In the citizens' dialogues, citizens exchange themselves as a valuable part of society and politics. Citizens come out of their bubble. They had to get to know people with completely different realities of life and experiences. Exciting discussions arise when, for example, a professor of literature from the Czech Republic discusses with a craftsman from Passau in Germany and a sports student from Austria. We have experienced in the project that the citizens' identification with Europe is increasing. An elderly gentleman from France said, for example, "It was great to meet so many other Europeans. We could talk face-to-face online and create ideas together. That was fascinating." And he said, it was an elderly man, "For the first time, I really feel being a European citizen." They also understood political processes better through direct dialogues with politicians, and they identify with their proposals and take responsibility also in the follow-up by communicating about their results or getting further involved in the implementation of their proposals. To sum up, citizens' dialogue with ordinary citizens make an important contribution to policymaking. Citizens develop well-balanced recommendations that have a great chance of being implemented and is accepted by the population. Citizens experience appreciation and empowerment. They can make a valuable contribution to society. So it is worth involving ordinary citizens in political processes. But how can ordinary citizens be involved in policymaking? How did we involve them? In the project, we had learned that the added value of inclusive citizens' participation does not come for free. It needs a lot of preparatory work. It needs time and resources. You know it, we talked about it today and yesterday. First of all, we established awareness and participatory expertise. We conducted a program to build up competence. Main target groups were politicians and public administrations. and all the initiators of the citizens' dialogues in the different regions. They need a general understanding about citizens' participation, what it is and what the added value is. They need to know that it is not enough to buy a facilitator to organize a nice participation process. All actors involved in the preparation, implementation, and follow-up of the citizens' dialogue must have participatory expertise according to their role. In the project, we held 3 information sessions on inclusive, deliberative, and effective citizens' participation methods and quality principles, 6 planning workshops to develop the concept for the individual dialogue, and 6 training sessions on design, methods, and follow-up of the citizens' dialogues. Altogether, 400 people from politics, administration, and civil society participated. We had mayors, officials, administrators from cities and regions qualified. We also provided a handbook with very practical hands-on material for the implementation of the innovative citizens' dialogue. During the training session and afterwards, we interviewed the participants. And for the vast majority, innovative participatory methods were new to them. Knowledge about digital participation was scarce. The biggest challenge was to create the design for the dialogues, and a big hurdle was the method of random selection to recruit diverse groups of citizens. Our evaluation afterwards showed that the methods and quality principle were indeed applied when the local, regional, and transnational citizens' dialogues were conducted in the cities and regions. So over 90%, we also asked the citizens, so over 90% of the citizens and over 90% of the organizers rated the dialogues as very good and good. Another important point for a successful participation of ordinary citizens, you have to use methods and quality principles to get the quality of the citizens' dialogue right. Of course, every single dialogue has to be adapted to the situation on site, to the context, and we gave the frame, the methods, but they had to design it, but there we also had the planning workshops for and the training sessions. A key principle is inclusion and diversity. Random selection is the best way to get inclusive groups of citizens. Citizens are selected by lot using resident registers of municipalities or specialized service providers. The group composition reflects the diversity of society. Random selection ensures that citizens who work would not normally participate in a citizens' dialogue take part. Depending on the topic and geographical reference, other criteria may than gender, age, and economic and educational background. Maybe you have other criteria like geographical coverage. In most of the projects, the random selection method was used, but still a hurdle was there, often missing personal data registers or data protection regulations or the lack of financial resources. The second key principle is deliberation. A participatory framework for deliberation was created that citizens feel safe to say what they want to say and ensures open-ended and informed discussions. The discussions were clearly structured and led towards a consensual development of joint proposals. And this is what we put a big emphasis on. At the beginning, we left enough time for the citizens to share their own experiences with the topic, their views, their perceptions, and their perspectives. And that was very, very interesting for the citizens, really to get to know the perspectives of the others. This was a very important part, very enlightening and exciting. Citizens worked together in small mixed groups. We provided simultaneous translation also in the small groups, so that they were really diverse groups discussing the topics and developing the proposals. Professional moderators ensured the structure and that everyone has an equal say and discussions are respectful and fair. Experts accompanied the dialogues and supported the citizens. Experts and fact-based information helped them to consider different aspects and weigh up arguments. And after presenting the proposals, they discussed them with politicians. Coming to the third key principle, that's effectiveness, involving policymakers and administrators right from the beginning and throughout the process is crucial. Impact only comes by involving political decision makers. The dialogues had to be designed in a way that they became a part of political decision making. That means a follow-up process had to be designed, ideally before the citizens' dialogue starts. From our experience, it is important that policymakers discuss citizens' ideas and proposals directly with them. In this way, politicians experience for themselves how constructive, inspiring, and valuable proposals of the citizens are. We have seen many politicians who were enthusiastic and highly motivated to implement the proposals. Our evaluation showed that all the citizens' dialogues, without exception, were attended by politicians with whom the citizens exchanges ideas and discuss proposals. Altogether, there were 200 politicians involved from all political levels. That is a remarkable high number, and this is a great result because the participation of politicians is the key factor of the effectiveness and impact of the citizens' dialogues. Many of the local and regional politicians already committed themselves to implementation, and some were planning concrete measures. At European level, there is today a feedback meeting with representatives from the EU Parliament, the Commission and the Council, as well as the citizens from the EU citizens panels on the recommendations of the citizens involved in the conference on the future of Europe. A colleague of mine is watching the live stream, and I'm really interested in getting to know the results. Maybe you saw the final plenary session with all the European citizens from the European panels and the officials, the European Commission, Council, all the politicians. It was a huge event, and you could sense the feeling how important it is that you have a direct contact, direct response with the citizens and have this direct contact. Maybe you remember Ursula von der Leyen taking afterwards a baby of one of the women who was pregnant when she started to participate in this European panel. So to sum up, inclusive citizens' participation with ordinary citizens only unfolds its added value if the citizens' dialogues are conducted in high quality, using inclusive, deliberative, and effective methods and quality principles. The willingness and involvement of politicians is crucial. Participatory competences in politics and administrations, as well as time and sufficient financial resources, are the basis for successful citizens' participation. What did we learn in order to strengthen citizens' participation in Europe? Our evaluation shows political representatives from cities and regions are open to modern citizens' participation. Participatory democracy in the citizens, in the cities and regions was sustainably strengthened. actors from administration and politics build up competences. To our evaluation question, do you want to use the participatory methods in the future again? What do you think? How many said yes or no? Guess. How many percentage? 70? 100% of the organizers said yes, and their strong commitment across 23 projects and 20 countries shows that representative and participatory democracy can complement each other very well. And at the EU level, I think this conference on the future of Europe was really a great booster for participatory democracy. And as I refer to the final conference, it's so important that politicians themselves experience how it is and how it feels, so that they are willing to go further steps. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Anna.
Just an addition, so if you are interested in, I brought this report with a lot of details about all the towns, regions are involved and the outcomes and so on. And also you can have a look at the website with all the hands-on practical materials that were used in the citizens' dialogues. So I will bring it over there, and if you want, you can take some material.
Thank you very much. We have shared on the chat for the online conference the website of the project and also the tools that you have produced, so that the participants online can have a direct link to all these resources that you have produced. A huge result, 100% of the involved policymakers in regions and cities that are willing to continue this process. About a follow-up, because you have shared what you have done so far, there will be a follow-up in the next months, so you will continue to support the training, to design more participatory processes in cities and regions together with the Committee of Regions. So what is the next step?
Exactly, that we are planning that. At the moment, at the Bertelsmann Stiftung, we are in a phase of applying for a new project, and our board will say yes or no, or maybe, but we applied for it, that we will have a continuation with the cooperation with the European Committee of the Regions, because they have huge networks of politicians and administrations all over Europe. They have a network of young elected politicians and also of councillors, so a lot of people who are interested in, and so we will continue working on that topic, and yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if there are comments or questions for Anna, also in the chat, perhaps later on. Okay, so we can hand over to Francesco Amodeo from DG REGIO of the European Commission. Francesco Amodeo is online, and he will talk about the pilot project from DG REGIO and OECD engaging citizens in cohesion policy. Please, Francesco, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Angela. Apologize not to be with you in this beautiful venue in Milan. I hope there will be another occasion to meet all of you. I have a presentation. I will try to manage to share with you. I hope I will make it. So let me know if you can see my presentation. Angela, can you see it?
Yes, not in presentation mode, but yeah, now we can see it. Excellent.
So actually today, I wanted to present two initiatives. I take this opportunity to present not only the work that we are doing with OECD, but also another interesting work that we are doing which is as well about participation. But before we start, I would like just to introduce myself for those which are not aware about the cohesion policy. Cohesion policy is a policy which is in shared management, meaning that we do not manage directly the funds for cohesions, but are managed by member states. Our unit is not directly in charge of following and monitoring the implementation of investment in member states. We have a horizontal role, and our task is to improve the management of EU funds. So we provide assistance, we develop new competence, and we share this knowledge with all the public services in Europe in charge of cohesion policy. So when we talk about good governance in cohesion policy, we basically refer to one thing, the capacity to manage the funds, and this is where our competence center basically started. Give you a couple of examples. The most important probably is the public procurement. We know that 40% of the cohesion policy is going through public investment, which is about procurement. So it's very important to learn how to do well this. But it's not only about the procedure, it's also about more general about good governance. And when we talk about good governance, the participation of stakeholders is very important because participation increases transparency. It's have an important effect on the quality of the investment at the end. Because the participation, as we said, is not only a democratic moment when we come to election, but it's also about when we decide how to invest public money for goods and services. So we want, as a competence center, to invest the condition which makes successful the participation of citizens in cohesion policies. For this reason, we are at the moment implemented two pilot initiatives. One, which is called Youth Teams for Green, is address young people. And the second is the innovative implementation of the partnership principle, which is for citizens in general. I will start first giving some word about the Youth Teams for Green, and then I will move to the project which are doing with OECD. So Youth Teams for Green. The idea of Youth Teams for Green is very simple. We want more participation of young people in cohesion policy. And this project was launched last year, this year actually, which is the European Year of Youth. What we want to make young people active players in cohesion policy. So really give them a real say on what to do. So we choose topics which interested the young people, which are the green transition, and we choose a real problem, which is related to the transition of territory, which are particularly affected by the green transition. So territory which are highly dependent on coal industry. And they need to reconvert economically, but all the society need to change. We launch a call for expression of interest, and we select one project from one consortium. The project is called A New Generation of Youth Ambassador for an Inclusive Green Transition. And they will manage a call for project, which I will describe in the next slides. But first, a few words about the structure, the governance of the project, because this project is the first time that the European Commission, DG REGIO, will be partnered with civil society. So we have a consortium which will manage these initiatives, which is composed by a network of regions, Startup Europe, and two civil society organizations. YEE, which is focused on young people, focused on environment, and Bank Watch, which is situated on Southeastern Europe, which is really focused as well on just transition plan. So what this project is about? We would like to offer young people the opportunity to participate in the decision-making process by really focus on a specific problem. And the problem is that there are these GTF area, just transition, territory which is eligible for the just transition, which need to prepare a plan for their economic reconversion, and they need to have inclusive plan. So who can participate to this project is the young people which are resident in this green area, which are area identified by the Commission as eligible for the Just Transition Fund. These are young people between 15 and 24 years old. They can propose a project on their own. They can organize in a group of friends or in the school, or they can be part of a non-profit organization. And as I said, they have to be resident in this place. Why this? Because it's important that really understand the situation and the problem in their area. So what we're proposing, we offer to these young people 10,000 euro for realizing the project. 10,000 euro, we think it's a very important amount. It's not for a small project, it's a really serious project that can be maybe even challenging for a young boy or girl, which is only 15 or 16 years old. But the idea is to really give financial means to realize the idea. It's not will be simple, because what they have to do is first to identify people which risk to be excluded by the transition. I don't know, all people, people with a specific social background. So it's to them to identify these people and to propose action for their involvement in the transition, and to choose the topic and the way of involving them to make inclusive the transition and to make them understand the green transition. So as you say, it's a really a decision-making question for them. Identify the target, choose the most appropriate form which make them successful. Of course, we don't leave alone these young people. There will be facilitator which will accompany them on this process. Today, this facilitator, we have identified facilitator for the country in green. Actually, today we are also from Sweden and probably for Belgium, but we're still looking for more facilitator, because these young people need to be helped in preparing the application, but also during the implementation. The consortium will help, but also local people will help. The consortium will also facilitate the exchange between these young people, because at the end, what we want from the consortium, that the consortium will provide us some recommendation what's the best format to involve cities, young people into cohesion policy. The project we will start in March for 12 months. So at the end of this period, we will have some recommendation how to involve young people into cohesion policy. This is ongoing. And if you want to know more about this project, you can visit the website, write it to them, but also you can participate to the webinars that are organized by the consortium twice a week to inform the young people, but also other which can be multiplier of this initiative about the project, how it works. Deadline for application is the 9th of January. We decided to extend the period for application for 1 month, from 2 months, because there was quite a lot of interest, and we realized that young people need more time to prepare the application. So there is still time for applying. I invite you to multiply this message to make aware. For Italy, it's 2 very small areas, Taranto and Sulcis in Sardinia, so it's very specific. Even if this is not your area of activity, please communicate with your peers and make them aware of this initiative. I think this is very important for young people to participate from all around Europe, because what we want at least 1 project per member state to select. The second initiative is the innovative implementation of the partnership principle. Here, why I want to focus on citizen? I already said that the governance is about participation. Anna mentioned, talk a lot about citizen participation, and I fully subscribe what she was saying and how important these citizen dialogue were. But when we look at our perimeter, which is cohesion policy, I think the only thing I could say is just mention what our Commissioner Ferreira in charge of cohesion policy and reform always say. EU cohesion policy is a policy for citizens, but also a policy with citizens. And this is what we try to do. What is our experience so far? The first experience is about the civic monitoring. I don't know if you already heard about the integrity path. That was a project which started with Transparency International 6 years ago already. And it's about the civic monitoring on public works and public procurement. And it works very well. And today, many countries are trying to implement in next programming period with their own funds, EU funds, for cohesion policy, other integrity path to continue on this experience. We had a conference on citizen participation just before the COVID crisis in 2020, and we launched 2 pilot initiatives. The first was a small grant up to 25,000 euro to civil society organization. We have 18 projects. What they did, they tried to bridge between the citizen and the public authority. Many projects was about raising awareness, that's the first step, but really try to combine the knowledge of the citizen and the public authorities to really identify project proposal. There are very interesting ideas, and they inspire us for the following. In parallel, we had also a first project with OECD, where we are launch a call for expression of interest to managing authority, intermediate body in the cohesion policy to propose area where they would like to learn more, how to apply more participation. And we select 5 projects, and the OECD helped them to prepare this project. This experience brings us to today and why we choose to launch this new initiative. This graph is not my graph. It's coming from a publication from OECD, which they explain the delivery processes. I know that your foundation, Angela, translating very well done. Congratulations, very good initiative to translate this. The more we can inform people, the best. And this is about what we mean by participation. First stage, informing. Second stage, public consultation. Third stage, participation. Anna talked basically about the stage 3. But when we are considering cohesion policy, what we basically do is informing. And we inform about that project, about the program. We consult, we have consultant, member state are consultant, citizen when preparing the program 21-27, they organize different forms. But there is a but, we do not consider that there is sufficient participation of citizens. This could be a deliberative process, a really decision making, but other form in the way that is not only about I provide my feedback, but the two parts, the citizen and the public authorities can work together in decide what's the best way to use the EU funds. That's why we launched this project, because we want to push to learn more about this stage 3, because that's the objective. It's not to stay at level 2, but to go to level 3 of participation, also for the public investment. So the objectives of this project are, we have some strategic objective, which is promoting the cooperation between the public authority and the civil society organization, and at the same time promote a new form of participation, level 3. Operation, what we do, we test, thanks to the goodwill of the pilot, new form of participation. We want to know also how, why, what are the conditions to create a good collaboration between the civil society and the public authority. We want to collect what we learn, and we want to share this knowledge. We have tools available. We have tools like the REGIO peer-to-peer, which allow to exchange the good practice between the member states. We have the community of practitioners, where more member states discuss together about specific issues. So this is our plan and what we are doing at the moment. In terms of implementation of what we are doing, I wanted to just underline one aspect. We accept only and exclusively joint proposal. If the proposal was not co-signed by the public authority and by a civil society organization, we would not accept. So this was we know that was a big constraint, but that's what we learned from the previous experience. There is no sufficient cooperation between civil society organization and public authority, and we wanted to be concrete. And this is about the new programming period. It was freedom to choose whether you want this cooperation in relation to design a project, design a strategy, design the program, or even a next step, the implementation of the model. This was completely free for the participant to choose. And what we offer, we don't offer money, which could be strange for once, but we don't really offer any financial support. I know this was a limit for the civil society organization, which we know they need financial support. We only offer technical support. And we want that this technical support to go evenly to the public authority, but also to the civil society organization. In our exercise, we really treat in the same way public authority and civil society organization, so they can grow together with the same background, the same concept, so they can continue working after in the project, when the project will be finished. In terms of implementation, so we launched the call of proposal in February, and we had an interview. We selected 7 projects in July, and then the project started. So the proposal are in the hands of OECD colleagues, the Open Governance Department of OECD, which are providing some training, because that's also important to put everybody on the same foot, explain the different form of participation, and then analyze their needs. What are the plan? What in terms of implementing the cohesion policy, and find the best participatory process that suit them. Finalizing this stage, they will start implementing this citizen engagement process, and they will provide the feedback in order to make them capable of continuing on this process. So, which are these projects that we have been selected? We have from Italy, we have a project from Emilia-Romagna, which was already participating with us in the topic, and today they are cooperating with a civil society organization composed of young people, very young people. With them, they want to look at how to involve young people in rural and mountain areas. So there are territorial development strategies, so there is a budget to realize this territorial development strategy, and they want, with the young people in the area, to design the best way to implement this these funds. We have a Polish agency for transport, which is a national agency in charge of public infrastructure, public transport, and there is this special, this civil society organization which is focused on people which have disabilities, and together with the metropolitan area of one of GMZ, it's a very Polish name, and difficult for me to pronounce it. They will work at the urban sustainable plan for this metropolitan area. So they will also involve the metropolitan area to design the new transport plan for the area. We have 2 projects from Romania. One region, for the first time in Romania, the region will manage, they are managing the funds, and they want to design participatory process for the development strategy. We are working this time not for what I would say a civil society organization, because this is a national unit of a Roman County of Council. It's not purely a civil society organization definition, but we keep it open in the same to all NGO, public or private, to participate in this project. There is a lot of potential here because the idea is that this methodology can be multiplied into the whole on the municipality in Romania. And then we have a specific municipality in Romania, which will work with a local civil society organization, and again, they will work on the transport planning. We have the Cantabria region, which was with us the previous time. They already did a citizen assembly in Bisaya province, and what they want to do now is to complete the cycle. We are involved through, as Rosanna said, a citizen panel that was selected with sorting, lottery, and so on. Now they are implementing the recommendation. They want to close the cycle and to look at how to interact with the citizen from the moment the recommendations are implemented. In further, we have a project in Slovakia where this municipality and again a local civil society organization, they will work together into the development strategy. They already have planned to start immediately in early 23 with physical meeting, but they also think about electronic platform. This is in the making, and we are really curious to see the results. But as you can see, we are working really at local level. So all the projects that have been selected, have been proposed, are really local. And with cohesion policy, it's not only local, it's not only about cities. That's why we want to launch a new call. In February, we will launch a new call for proposal, which we want to continue investigating on the area, because we know that the participation is not only in the circle of the cities, of small territories, but it can be applied to region, to national issues. So we want to learn more about this opportunity. So in early February, please stay. We will keep an eye, because there will be another opportunity to prepare a project with public authority and civil society organization and work with us on innovative participant process. In the second half of March, probably we will organize a workshop where the idea is to present the 6 projects, to complete what we are doing, and also talk more about this new call, but also to present the 70 projects, more or less around 70 projects from the young people that will be selected on the EU Things for Green. This is a part of an event we organize every year about good governance. So I will keep you informed so you can participate if interested. And this is my last slides. I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Francesco. First of all, to have enlarged the perspective beyond the DG REGIO OECD pilot with these new opportunities and the new project, and also, yes, sharing all these opportunities also for us, for the participants online here and in person, because there are many initiatives, interesting initiatives coming up. I have a curiosity, as we have learned from Anna. There was a survey, a collection of feedbacks from the participants and especially policymakers in our activities together with the European Committee of the Regions. And there is this huge willingness to continue this process of involving citizens. Have you collected feedbacks and comments from the participants of your pilots and your initiatives? And I don't know if there is a sort of follow-up, but at least collecting their opinions and the willingness to don't stop this process, don't make these processes standalone exercises, but to really transforming their way to do policymaking.
We had, during the first call, when we were working with the 18 civil society organizations and the public authorities, we will discuss with them what they think and what's the big challenge. And what they say that the most difficult things to do is to build mutual trust between public authority and civil society organization. That's the first thing that we learned. When we were preparing the routines for green, we have a public consultation. We consult the civil society organization to learn from them what they think, whether this what we want to do it was feasible. And today we are still learning what is necessary in our fields to do. The project is ongoing, so we haven't finished yet. We are still in the middle of making, and there will be more moments to learn about what we can do to improve. I mentioned there is a community of practitioners of managing authority on citizen engagement that they discuss more concrete questions about the management of funds and the participation of the citizens. There is I would like to mention the European community of practitioners of the participant principle, which is another initiative. And with OECD, we are collecting through a survey their understanding of what citizen participation means and where we stand and what is needed. So it's a survey that if you are ready, the first report that, of the first pilot will provide the assessment of those which participated. And now we are collecting more information because maybe there is not sufficient understanding of citizen participation generally. So we want to have a benchmark where we stand.
Thank you very much. And so I think, Ryan, it's your turn. Ryan Titley from the European Regions Research and Innovation Network based in Brussels. Ryan will share some thoughts about engaging quadruple helix and the collaboration of quadruple helix together with cities and regions, policymakers in the context of the European mission, which is one of the novelties under Horizon Europe. It's a way to make stronger collaborations among researchers, centers, universities, innovators, innovation actors in general, policymakers, and citizens. It is a key point, a key element of the European mission. So what is your experience from ERRIN of this kind of new form of collaboration?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the invitation to speak. The last day or so has been really interesting for me, and it meant I kind of had to start again because I had prepared a very long and text-heavy, boring set of slides. And then I listened to the examples that were being given yesterday from the Transform project, and I threw that slide deck away, and late last night I tried to pull together, still very long and a lot of slides, but less text at least. So I can't promise it won't be boring, but at least you'll have less text to look at. But I think what's really important is that we try, and I'm going to try to do that through my presentation, is make a link between what we're doing in the European missions and what you've been doing in Transform and how I think those two things can overlap. I'm a little bit of an outsider. I think when everybody says, you know this person in RRI, I normally say, no, I don't, because although in ERRIN we've been working in RRI projects for quite a few years now, we're not necessarily in the club, I think, and that can be good and bad. And I try to give a little bit of this perspective as an outsider from RRI, how we see this quadruple helix collaboration and how we can bring it forward in some of the research and innovation programs, and particularly linking to the mission. So I will pull together a couple of anecdotes from the projects that we've been working on and try to make some links back to the work that you've been doing. I also found really fascinating, I think every presentation has almost been caveated by the idea that Transform has been running through COVID. We were actually there at the kickoff meeting in Brussels, so my colleague Parita Lindholm was there to be involved in that. So it's nice that we kind of go through the whole process and are able to join you here today for the close of the project. And I think you've had some really fantastic results. So there's also some things that we would maybe want to do and pick up on in some of our projects that we can learn from. And there's a lot of points that you've been making that are not necessarily new, but we do need to keep on repeating because they're not being picked up necessarily. And particularly we'll come back to the point on impact that was discussed at the end of yesterday's session, because I think that's a really interesting and important point that we bring together in some of the projects that we're working on. So 40 slides, and I'm already probably 2 minutes down. So I will start a timer just to make sure I'm not completely running over. So we try to get a little bit of perspective to the presentation. I can talk forever as well. It doesn't help I'm natively English, so it's just talking comes naturally to me. ERRIN, so my organization, it's not quite as snappy as the acronym. ERRIN stands for the European Regions Research and Innovation Network. Just for context, we're a Brussels-based network. We work with around 120 regions, and most importantly and relevant to today, we're working with ecosystems, innovation ecosystems. So it's not just the public authority that we work with everybody in the ecosystem, and we try to bring them together and start those dialogues. Also unique in our organization, you will know in Brussels there are endless networks doing things with public authorities, regions. What's quite unique about ERRIN is that we work with the Brussels representations. So we're working with people on the ground in Brussels, admittedly, but on the ground, knowing what's going on contextually with their region and the cities within their regions. So it also means that we have a bit of first-hand knowledge of what the cities are experiencing, and we try to bring that back into the feedback loop. Our mission is to bring together local regional authorities, universities, private sector, and what it doesn't say in there is the citizens, but this is becoming a more and more important aspect in what we're doing. Not necessarily so easy in the Brussels scene, because you don't have those regional organizations that are working with the regional actors in Brussels, but it becomes an important narrative that we're talking about. Great. Yes, so I wanted to show this slide. This was a slide that was in a presentation, you can see at the bottom, from 2012. And this was given by my boss at the time. And we were talking about quadruple helix partnerships in 2012. This is not a new thing. And I was reflecting a little bit, and I maybe speak from a personal perspective less than my organization, but I was thinking, if we were talking about quadruple helix partnerships in 2012, what were we doing? And I'm not sure I have the answer to that, because we weren't engaging with citizens in 2012 as regions. Maybe some regions were leading the way on that, but not as a general, as 120 regions as part of a network. So what I wanted to kind of come away with from today as well is the idea that we need to stop talking about things and make sure that the cities and regions are actually implementing. And I think that's why Transform is a fantastic project. And one of my takeaways from Transform is that we need to find a way of upscaling this, but I'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. So my organization, we're about place-based perspective. We want to bring that to research and innovation programs and policy. We're about increasing project opportunities for our members, not so interesting for today, making connections and engaging between EU regions, EU institutions and other partners, and positioning regional interests in the R&I landscape. But that's a little bit of background from where we come from. So on to the EU missions, and as Angela mentioned, these missions are meant to be driving, the idea behind the Mazzucati report was that we need to have these the moonshot missions that will actually take something that is important to Europe and actually put resources behind it and build portfolios of projects that can start actually working on the bigger issues that are facing. And I, again, in the previous presentation, found it quite interesting, or in the previous session, sorry, somebody mentioned about this distance between short-term and long-term objectives. And I actually think that's not necessarily the case in EU missions. And although I'm not talking to citizens, when I talk to our cities and regions and I ask them on the ground, what are your citizens interested in? There's no question that things around climate, things around the city adapting to climate neutrality or climate adaptation, these are big things. So I think the idea that citizens don't necessarily have this longer term perspective is maybe a bit of a misnomer, because they're definitely the conversations that we're having with our members. These are things that are right in the forefront of citizens' minds. Just to say that we've been working on the missions for 4 years or so, and I will come back in when I look at the climate adaptation mission to give a bit of a perspective of what we were saying back then when we started doing this work in 2018. We have 13 working groups. majority of which are thematic, and those working groups link to our activities within the missions. And I will touch upon as two examples today, the climate neutral smart cities mission and the climate adaptation mission, both of which we have European projects in, but also ones that we've been really engaging with our members on. So I think it was in September 2020, this report was launched by the Mission Board for Climate Neutral Smart Cities. And you can see, and maybe it's a little bit forgotten when we start talking about the missions now, but the proposed mission was 100 climate neutral smart cities by 2030 by and for citizens. It's embedded in the mission. We should be doing this for the citizens. It's got to be done by and for the citizens. And again, when we now talk about the mission, we call it the EU Cities mission. But this is still the forefront, it should be in the forefront of our mind, and is the most important part of what we're doing when we're looking at these missions. ERRIN is a partner in Net Zero Cities, but I'm not speaking on behalf of Net Zero Cities today. Net Zero Cities is the European project that is supporting the cities mission and supporting the actually 112 cities that are looking to get to climate neutrality by 2030. And I pulled up this from Instagram. I found it, again, really interesting and a fascinating point. It is important. 11.7% of the EU population is in those 112 cities. You have the number there, 500,000. 500,000 cities living in EU, in the 100 EU cities. But what does that really mean? I think this is a little bit, we can put figures. We talked about the impact yesterday. Okay, great. We have 11% of EU citizens in these 100 cities. But are we engaging with them? Are we bringing them into the mission as well? And these types of slides, and I will bring another one up later in another project, we need to think why we're putting these types of things forward, because at some point the citizens may get forgotten in this process. However, the positive side on the cities mission is that the real innovation in the approach comes through the governance. The idea, and we've heard it a little bit over the last day or so, about the climate city contract. And this is a contract that should be, which cities will bring together and should be bringing all stakeholders into the process. So it's a multi-actor and citizen engagement, and it should be systemic and demand-driven in nature. This is something that should be revolutionizing the way that we engage with these large mission-type approaches. And within the 112, we're hoping that there will be 2 rounds next year where we start to get these 112 cities signing up with their climate city contracts. And they should be, throughout the process, be engaging with their citizens and getting their buy-in, but also getting the understanding of what is actually needed in the city, because also the city's citizens are the ones that understand the problems, maybe more so than anybody else. This is another project. ERRIN is not involved in it, but we had a presentation from them earlier this week. It's called the CRAFT project. And they are using another EU initiative, which is nature-based solutions, is the new European Bauhaus, to connect the way that we look at design and urban development connected to the city's mission. And the reason that I bring this up, because I found it fascinating, this is a diagram. You won't be able to see it so easily, but the first picture I thought was quite good because it says underneath in the caption, cheap talk. And I think this is a little bit, some of the takeaways I've taken from the presentations today is that there's been a lot of talk, but we now need to find some way of putting that into action. So it goes from cheap talk to mapping, to practicing, to prototyping, to testing, to modeling. And this new approach that the CRAFT project is putting forward is really interesting. They will also be doing engagement with cultural artists and creative sector, property owners, storytelling campaigns with and by citizens. So again, very much linking to the mission that we are putting forward was put forward by the Mission Board in September 2020. But also, this is quite a fascinating slide. I hope I'm allowed to use this, but I've taken it from their project presentation. It's a new model that they've launched, and it was launched in November. And it's trying to change the perspective of how we look at European projects, again, coming back to impact. So we have our TRL levels, and that's the technology readiness level, and we use this a lot. And what they're saying is, actually, we need to completely expand this and blow this up because we need to look at how things are being done at a governance level. But there's also a societal impact that has a far wider reaching aspect. And this is something that should be taken into consideration when we're assessing what we're actually doing within the projects. Then linked to the city's mission, ERRIN and a number of the partners in the room are involved in another project which is called Mosaic. Mosaic is developing a methodology for co-creation in mission-oriented challenges like the city's mission. I say like the city's mission because we want to take this methodology and apply it elsewhere, but actually at the moment we're really focusing in on the city's mission. So it's a mission approach, it's bringing in co-creation. We're trying to, and again, that's also why we're here today, connecting those dots with other European projects. We want to try to avoid that lost information where one project is isolated and siloed and not joining up together with other ones doing similar things, and putting forward the idea of open innovation. So how do we do that within Mosaic? So the first element of the project was a research side where we did a mapping of the co-creation aspects that have already taken place in other Horizon projects. And from that, we were able to pull together a methodology, which is how we will develop these types of citizen engagement, but not just citizens, so it's multi-stakeholder engagement in the development of the Climate City contracts and the mission. We have 2 pilots, Gothenburg and Milan. And I just want to tell a very short anecdote on one of them. So we've started, colleagues from our partnership have started to meet with the cities, and they had a meeting a couple of months ago with Gothenburg. And the idea is that we start to select a challenge that we can then approach and run through this methodology. And the first conversations were with Gothenburg, and they said, we would like to remove cars from the road. We want to reduce traffic on the streets. Okay. Very nice idea, very much linked to the city's mission, of course, reducing emissions. But the problem was that they already came with what they wanted to do in the end result. We weren't actually having had any of those discussions with the stakeholders. And colleagues from the Mosaic Partnership were actually able to say, okay, this is not bad, but we actually need to start engaging with the stakeholders in order before we get to that end point. And I think what's really interesting, and maybe this is a change, the city was really open to that, and they took us back a step back and said, very good point, okay, we take that on board, and we will actually look to, we're not completely against, the idea is not to have no cars on the road. So we have to actually have those engagements with the citizens, but also with the private sector, because we have Volvo in Gothenburg, and they have a big plant there. So there's other factors that have to be taken in and other conversations that have to be had. But I think maybe one of the slight changes is that cities, and this is my observation also from having conversations with our members, is 10 years ago, cities were being told to engage with citizens, and they were saying, okay, we will do a dialogue or we will do a consultation. And now we're saying to them, actually, this isn't enough and you're not doing it in the right way. And they're saying, we know, we need help. Can you support us in this? And when we talk about the work in the city's mission, we've had a number of our members saying, we need to do better sharing of good practices because we don't know what we're not doing. We need to understand what other cities are doing. And this is where our community of practice comes in. So we've also brought in a number of replicator cities. These cities, there was an open call within the project. These cities don't get any money. So again, this is a bit of a change. I know some projects do this, but we're not giving these cities anything in financially. What we're giving them is a methodology and the opportunity to work with our experts within the project. And they are super excited. We've already had a number of workshops. So recently we had an online workshop which was looking at fair rewarding of citizens. So again, linking back to some of the things that you were discussing yesterday in Transform, which is really interesting. And of course, then there's also the ethical aspects of these types of things as well, which is a far broader discussion. We also have a survey that was out as well, where we're trying to collect feedback from other cities. I think if anyone's interested, come and speak to my colleague Giampiero at the front, and we can provide links for that. We also had a workshop on roadmaps for co-creation. And then I just want to touch upon another one that we had, which was a community of practice workshop that took place in Brussels. And this community of practice workshop was really focusing on how do you integrate the private sector into the city's mission. So again, your Climate City contract, how do you bring the private sector with you? And again, this is a little bit about changing, and we've got some excellent partners in Mosaic who have a lot of experience on this, but it's also a little bit about changing the mindset, not just of the city, because the city is normally a little bit anxious about this, but also changing the mindset of the private sector to say, you have a responsibility in this city as well, so we have to do this together. We're also running city clinics, so these city clinics will bring together cities. This was a request from the cities. They said, we want a safe space, we want to share good practices, and we want to be able to talk to each other and understand what cities are doing. And actually, a city-led initiative through the project meant that we've already been able to put 4 cities together to have an open discussion, and we are there just to facilitate. And this has been really excellent, and again, coming bottom up from the cities. I know I'm running short on time, so I just want to quickly touch on the climate adaptation mission as well. And again, we're seeing from the Commission, every time they're presenting something new within the missions, citizens are embedded. In the largest section of this part, citizens are embedded in what we need to be doing. So ERRIN is also a partner in 2 new projects on climate adaptation. I just want to give a bit of an anecdote on this one. I find it quite interesting. So I was reading back through when I was listening to everybody talk yesterday, and I was thinking, what are we doing in Resist, our demonstration project on climate adaptation? Large-scale project, 25 million. We'll be working with a number of pilots. We'll be doing digital twins all around. What are we doing with citizens? Because I know it's going to be there. And I did a quick search in the document, and it appeared 70 times in 45 pages. So it's embedded in the text, but what does that really mean? And these are questions I will be taking back to our kickoff meeting in January, because I want it to be more concrete, because we can't just keep saying we will engage with citizens. And this is what I found really fascinating. So this 12 million in the middle, if you can't see it, 12 million outreach. And I had a quick read through the document, and it's 10% of the population of each of the regions that we're working with. Now, what I will go back to my colleagues and say is, what does this mean? Are we sending a tweet out and that 12 million people will read our social media at some point? Or do we have targeted actions, again, coming back to the slide that we just had from the colleague from DG REGIO, which was the 3 points where we're moving this citizen engagement on. And I think these are some of the things I've learned from the last 2 days that have made it really useful for me, because I will now go back and put pressure on my colleagues that are working on these projects to start actually not just talking about citizen engagement, but really try to bring that in. And again, we need to apply that to the different levels as well. It's not just the citizens, but we have to look at the multi-actor approach. So, just as a final thought, I'll have a quick check of my notes as well, because I had a couple of points that I wanted to bring up. Maybe before I go into this, so within ERRIN we have our working groups, and every year we do a strategy planning meeting, and the missions have been a big part of our priorities. It's coming from our management board as something we should focus on. And we actually took a little bit of innovation from our colleagues from Sticky Dot, and we did an icebreaker with the working group leaders, which are from regions, so we're bottom up, and these regions are involved in setting the strategy. And the idea was you take a piece of paper and you should draw a picture of what the priority for you is in the next year. And I looked for this picture yesterday. I should have taken a picture of it because I didn't. Because one of my colleagues from one of the cities drew an incredibly articulate city landscape with greening, so MBS, and cars still driving around, but maybe they were electric cars. So this fascinating landscape. And then in the middle, just a stick woman next to them. And he had to explain what it was. And he said, well, I'm drawing the city mission. This is the EU cities mission. We want to get to climate neutrality by 2030, but we're putting the citizens in the middle. And I think this is something that we've changed the mindset of these cities. They know that the engagement with the citizens is the key priority. And again, this is the governance overview from the Commission, just looking at the different missions. I could have touched upon any one of these missions here today. We've been working in all of them, but the citizens are a key aspect in each and every one of them. And I think that's what you see at the bottom here. So, and again, linking back to the first speaker, because the Conference of the Future of Europe is there. This led into the strategic dialogue at the European level. This flowed through, and now we have a number of initiatives and projects that will support that. And at the bottom here is the citizen engagement, co-design, co-deployment, and co-monitoring. So this has to be embedded in this approach. And as ERRIN, I said we've been talking about this since 2012, probably longer. I just couldn't find any more presentations going back that far. We need to stop necessarily talking about what it is and start actually really putting something in place. And I found we put a position paper together on the climate adaptation mission, and we said citizen engagement is key for all missions. Citizen engagement, however, requires sound methodology and rigorous planning. Too often terms such as co-design, co-creation are used for coordination and consultation. Taking citizen engagement seriously requires a real change in the way public administrations work, and when designing and executed well, a real public sector innovation is needed. And I think that's an interesting perspective to leave on, because I highlighted 2 points that I wanted to finish on just as a conclusion, and that is maybe we're underestimating people in our cities. And if we give them the opportunity to actually get involved in a lot of this stuff, they will be there. And that's the inspiration I take from the Transform project, is that you've had these successes. And what do we need to do? We need to take Transform and we need to upscale it. We need to see that on a far bigger level. And of course, just a quote from our colleagues from Brussels this morning, they said, "You were able to do in 2 months what the government couldn't do in 2 years." So we need to bring in different stakeholders in order to facilitate these types of conversations, because if we leave it to individual public administrations, and I think they know this, it may not happen as fast as we need it to. And these missions are incredibly ambitious. So if we want to get to climate neutrality by 2030, we need to have started yesterday in order to achieve it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ryan, for this perspective and all these experiences run by ERRIN together with other colleagues across Europe, of course. I have a question for you. We have learned that from 2012, you together with Citizen and REGIO are talking about quadruple helix collaboration, citizen engagement. It seems that now cities are ready and are at least open to embark on citizen engagement processes. What has changed in between? Do you think because they are scared by controversies, or also groups of organized citizens, like we have learned from the experience of our keynote speaker? In that case, of course, we are talking about court litigation, which is not so often the case in Europe for all the details and all the elements that we have learned from her. But in any case, there are bottom-up approaches from citizens that if they don't find a space to collect data, to push the policymakers from the top-down level, so institutional space, they find a way to raise their voices, their instances, the ideas, their opinions, or perhaps there is a genuine commitment also driven by European policies like smart specialization strategies, the examples of cohesion policy, the mission in itself.
I think it's probably a little bit of everything, actually. It's definitely coming bottom up. There's no question of that. But also, I think different actors are starting to realize the importance, and maybe through failures, understanding that we can't not do this, in a sense. There's a really nice example from one of our cities in Mosaic, Aarhus from Denmark, where they give an example of private sector giving citizens who maybe wouldn't be able to afford to take part in these types of activities time off from their workday and not losing their salary in order to take part in these types of activities. And I think both from the private sector and the public sector, there's this realization that if we don't engage with citizens, there's a good chance that we will be investing in projects that don't work. And there is, I think the mission, from an EU perspective, the missions have put a ticking time bomb on a lot of these activities that we now have to start engaging a lot faster. What I hope, and I have high expectations for Net Zero Cities in this, is that this isn't talk and there are real on-the-ground activities that will take place with citizens, because to get to climate neutrality by 2030 is already an ambitious activity or challenge, and if we don't involve the citizens in that, we don't get buy-in, we will be in a bad place. I mean, there's always a lot of talk about behavioral change, and I always feel that that's putting the pressure back onto the citizens, that this is your responsibility. Exactly. You need to take care of it. And I think maybe this is slightly changing. I hope this is changing. This is the conversations we're having with cities, that they know we need the citizens now. But I don't know if there's one particular aspect that makes it more important than others. I think it's all maybe just coalescing around the same topic.
Thanks a lot. There is a question on the chat, maybe more for, it is more for Mosaic team about the survey on fair citizens rewarding to co-creation is not open any longer. Unfortunately, we are collecting all the data and analyze the responses, the results of the survey to make a nice paper, but also to relying on this data to design guidelines for the cities embarking on cities mission, and so to really conduct a meaningful, fair process of co-creation, also take into account the reward part for citizens, which is something that we have touched upon yesterday, but also today. It's really important to reward citizens taking part in these exercises in deliberative democracy, in citizen, in science, and all the multi-stakeholder engagement processes. But it is even more important in co-creation activities, where the final end of the process is a product, a service that goes to the market, and so how to deal with this in terms of rewardings for the citizens taking part in with ideas, creativity, data in this kind of process. So stay tuned for the results of the Mosaic project. So now we have the four speakers. We have online Ramojus Reimeris. I'm sorry for the, I'm sure, wrong pronunciation of the name.
Thank you, Angela. Actually, it was perfect.
Thank you very much. From the European Commission Joint Research Center in Sevilla, and Ramojus will talk about the open discovery process in the partnerships for regional innovation, talking about novelties. We have talked about European missions in Horizon Europe, partnerships for regional innovation, and open discovery process is the step ahead of the smart specialization strategy and entrepreneurial discovery process. So really interesting for us to listen to you. The stage is yours, Ramojus.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, it's a pity that I couldn't join you in person. I find the atmosphere of the conference very inspiring, and you have a very beautiful environment as well. The presentations that has been made in this panel and some previous presentations that I had a chance to follow, they seem to be very relevant for the job that we are doing. And as you mentioned, I would like to shortly talk about the partnerships for regional innovation and the open discovery processes. I have some slides. I realize that the time is a bit under the pressure right now, so I'll try to be as fast as I can, sharing some work that we are doing with you. Let me know if you can see my slides in full screen.
Yes, perfectly.
Very good. So let me talk a bit about the context that brings us to the need for some further thinking on our innovation policies. First of all, I think that the moment for a change is a very right one, because we face the urgency of climate change. We also face a lot of other dimensions, like a social dimension, political dimension, technological dimensions, that are going through some deep transformations, and it's happening globally. We also have to think about the European Union's position in the future, in the economy of the future. We have to rethink industrial policy and competitiveness through sustainability. We also see some new scientific paradigms of innovation gaining traction, not only in the thinking, but also in practice. And we have, together with many regions that we are collectively working with, we have a vast experience already with the smart specialization strategies and some experience with the recover and resilience facilities. So we think that those confluencing and maturing trends propose a very right moment to make a step forward. Also, the new cycle has already started, and again, we have to build on our collective knowledge with the smart specialization strategies and entrepreneurial discovery process, the process that has been touched as smart specialization in this conference under the acronym of EDP. But actually, we understand that, again, because of these maturing trends, we have a need to go further. We have to think about system level change, not changing some of the elements within our innovation systems, innovation policies, but how to achieve a system level change. We also have to think about more expressed directionality. We have to think about mission-oriented policies, has been already touched, and we have to encourage much more of discovery and experimentation happening together with the citizens, with our stakeholders, and co-define possible solutions for that. To address all this, European Commission's Joint Research Center has introduced a new strategic approach that would be linking territorial transformation with top EU priorities, keeping the local ownership of this process and keeping in mind a very place-based opportunities and challenges. We want to pilot and discover, experiment and learn how to connect many more policies, go beyond the research and innovation policies or industrial policy. We want to have a connection with social policies, sustainability transitions, much broader and deeper understanding how can we connect education and employment policies to that. Of course, thinking about the regional development. We want to achieve the participatory governance framework. We want to experiment with the new ways of working across the government and a whole of government approach in order to achieve that. As a first step of partnerships of regional innovation, we published a playbook just at the beginning of the summer, which brings many tools. We call them fishes. That has a potential effect to address some of the issues that I've been mentioning in the beginning of the presentation. It also brings some leading thinking and practice on innovation together with many units of Joint Research Center and beyond Joint Research Center. Also, we have a scientific committee supervising our job on this, composed of very leading researchers of regional development and innovation. The playbook builds on 3 blocks. The 3 main blocks that we think should be at the core of the further thinking on innovation policies. It's a strategic framework, it's open discovery process, and policy and action mix. As a second step of partnerships for regional innovation, currently we are running a pilot together with Committee of Regions. The pilot has attracted attention of 74 territories who are now practicing some of the tools, some of the new approaches, some of the new methods of collaboration in this partnerships for regional innovation way of thinking. The pilot will end at the middle of next year. We think that we will be able to improve, adapt, and operationalize many of the ideas that has been already published in the playbook. But also, in addition to that, we think that we will see many new partnerships for regional innovation being established as a result of this pilot as well. Now, to focus on the open discovery process, and there's an upcoming report from us that we try to revise many lessons that we learned during smart population strategies being implemented in the previous programming period, and especially focusing on entrepreneurial discovery process. We want to see how it reflects in the changing policy landscape. We do a revision of some of empirical studies that we did. We learn from the implementation of the smart population strategies, and we see how can we address the new needs for the innovation policy by bringing forward the concept of open discovery process. The main lessons, not really going broad into the details, we found that from the previous programming period, from the EDP, we see that more policy learning and communication is necessary, because not always had a situation where the policy concepts has been explained and transferred into practice clearly. We also see that we need more directionality with the EDP, directions for change. We also observed that the role of the public government has to be more proactive. The public authorities themselves has to become actors of change during the entrepreneurial discovery process, and links very nicely with the previous presentations in this panel. We also see that we need new models, tools, ways of the participatory process. We need wider and deeper participation of the stakeholders during this process. We also see that the capacities needed to achieve all the previous steps are not there in place, and we need some specific skills and specific training for the public authorities to be able to manage the future discovery processes. To focus on the open discovery process, that is new. It should not be understood like discarding the entrepreneurial discovery process and going on with something different. It's not that. As the Partnerships for Regional Innovation, it builds on the success and knowledge of smart specialization. The open discovery process is an extension to existing entrepreneurial discovery process. But we think that there is a way and space to propose some new elements within the discovery processes. We think that the whole discovery process could rely working backwards from goals, achieving the coalitions of the stakeholders. We think that these coalitions should keep shared agendas and open agendas in order to provide additional actions after the process sessions are over and the implementation is already in place to keep the discovery processes alive. Of course, the additional action should go not just for research and innovation, economy, but for society and environment in general. These policies should be aligned with the possible additional actions. Another important element that we talk about is the international dimension. We see that the international dimension was not really always taken care about during the entrepreneurial discovery process when it was done. It was more focused on the implementation phase afterwards, already with some ideas, projects, and agreements being in the pipeline. It seems that there's a missed opportunity and a possibility of doing the actual thinking together with international partners, involving them into the actional discovery processes. There are many ways and many levels to do that, at the personal or organizational level, of course, at the program level as well, having in mind many instruments and many existing arenas and platforms for this collaboration and this ideas sharing to happen. I think that was the last slide that I wanted to share with you. Thank you for the attention, and please, you can follow the progression of the PRI playbook that we will definitely improve together with our pilot participants, and on the PRI pilot by accessing these barcodes. I think that presentations will be shared afterwards. I'm happy to answer any questions if you would have. And thank you again for listening.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ramojus. Of course, we are really interested on the open discovery process because we have also seen that in the tools and the resources on which the new partnership for regional innovation rely on, there is responsible research and innovation. So we think that in the open discovery process, there could be more space for the societal discovery process through participatory activities, more citizen engagement to be in which Transform can provide some inspiring examples. So have you foreseen with the pilots, with the territories that are embarking on this new process, specific actions also in terms of capacity building in supporting them to really go for this kind of processes, more connected to citizen engagement and this kind of participatory processes with societal actors as a whole?
Yes, in the pilot action, we foresee 3 working groups that already started working. We already had some kickoff meetings, and now we're in the process of aligning the further actions during the next year. The working groups are specifically designed to work on the pillars of the Partnerships for Regional Innovation that I mentioned, and there is a separate working group, a working group 2 out of the 3, who is specializing on the open discovery process and local mission approach. We try to together with the territories, and we have 15 territories that expressed particular interest into practicing, piloting, co-creating, co-defining these concepts and these tools in the playbook. So I guess during this journey together with the pilot participants, at the end we will be able to provide more precise examples how it's happening on the ground, where the direction of the open discovery process and application, the practical application of it, could be going. As well, I think that currently there are some examples that are being already done, and we could probably give more space for these examples to be implemented in the other territories elsewhere. So I myself really looking for the outcomes of the pilot action to be able to, of course, improve and share the achievements. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if there are questions for the panel. That is time to have a short roundtable because we are running out of time. And I would like to ask to all the 4 panelists, we have learned from so many initiatives across Europe, from DG REGIO, and also this new approach of the open discovery process, the EU mission, the conference on the future of Europe, and all the connected activities at more local level with regions and cities. And we have been talking about citizen and multi-stakeholder engagement since years, perhaps also since decades. But why all these engagement processes are not by design included in policymaking processes in cities and regions? So as Ryan said, it's really now the moment to take action, to ground meaningful citizens and multi-stakeholder engagement. In your view, what are the challenges to be overcome? So why we don't have by design or by default, if you wish, this kind of processes when designing policy making for the common good? It is a problem, a matter of resources, of capacities and competencies in the group in the public administration, so policymakers don't have the right competencies to also ask for external support, or there is a lack of commitment. What is, in your experience, the problem to be overcome? Anna, do you want to start?
Yeah, I see there are 2 points. The first is that normally politicians, they are not used to work in such a way. I mean, they are elected, they know their citizens from their constituency, they have talks to them, to individual citizens. Sometimes they get complaints and so on. That is the normal contact they have with citizens, and they really don't know the difference if you really have citizens participation that is at a high standard, that is constructive. You have constructive discussions, you will really get good results and so on. That's a completely different story than their reality. And that is, they have to experience it by themselves, so that they see the added value, that they have the willingness and the commitment. And that is a very, very important step. Because if there is this willingness and they see the added value, then they will, of course, make resources available and so on and so on. So this is one thing. The other thing is that it really needs capacities. I mean, it isn't for free. It isn't just do it, just invite some people. I mean, they will not come. I mean, you have to have an attractive program. You have to have incentives. Or you really have to say them that when they come, they will make a difference. There is an impact and so on. And this is, this means you need participatory competences with all these people who are initiating and carrying out citizens' participation. That is a second challenge, but it is necessary. Otherwise, we will not get a step forward.
Thank you, Anna. Francesco, would you mind to continue?
I try to add to already a very exhaustive list that indeed the competence is the top list, both on both sides, I would say, not only on the public authorities and the resources. And there should be real issues to discuss, not something for a window dress. It should be a real question that have to be discussed. And there should be already an idea what kind of follow-up to give in order the process to continue and stop. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you, Francesco. Ryan?
Yeah, maybe 2 just very quick points. I think I'm not an expert in this, but what I would say is that the Transform project, if it's a difficult decision for decision makers and they need to be shown, that's why the Transform project is so important. We need to have case studies. We need to give policy briefs. We need to explain why these types of things are important in very simple ways. And then maybe just one other point, which I think maybe doesn't get said enough, but from the ERRIN perspective, a lot of credit has to go to the European Commission as well for picking these things up and really focusing on that now. And if we look at the EU missions, we will have the Horizon Europe midterm review coming up, and it's going to be really important that we actually explain to the Commission that this has to continue. And it's really great that we see in each slide for the missions that citizens are a focal point in the work that we're doing there. So maybe it doesn't get said enough, but the Commission have done a great job there, and long may it continue.
Thank you, Ryan. Ramojus?
Yes, maybe just to add very briefly. For me, it seems that the engagement is already there, meaning that the citizens are included in the majority of the processes. What is still, I think, needs a lot of improvement is the design of the process, the tools, the methods, to make sense, to make this inclusion to be meaningful for the both sides. and after the communication after the inclusion, the results of the inclusion, how they shaped the outcomes. I think that is what we are still missing a lot. And it could be improved by many dimensions, by having a better capacities in the administrations, having more resources for this process to happen, having more and better communication during and after the process. So probably there's a lot to be improved still. Thank you.
Thank you. A last comment on Transform. As we have presented, we think, 3 interesting experiences in 3 key regions in terms of research and innovation, and our ambition was to transform these 3 regions in 3 front runners, 3 really inspiring territories for responsible research and innovation and citizen and multi-stakeholder engagement as well. So do you think that in a way our experiences, our stories, our methods could fit in your initiative, could be inspiring also for the cities and the region with which you are talking and working in the present, but also in the future? Anna?
What was the question?
If Transform could be an inspiring example also for your own initiative and your exercises of deliberation and deliberative democracy.
Yes, of course. I mean, what I heard is that really you are front runners, so you are pioneering partners, and we are at the moment at the Bertelsmann thinking about setting up a network of pioneering regions for front runners for citizens' participation, and thinking about setting up a charter for good citizens' participation. And that could be also an initiative to help to institutionalize or to motivate others to follow these initiatives. So I would like to get in contact again, and maybe you will join us. We will see if our board will give the approval for that project, but this is also one step forward to get things institutionalized and more common.
Thank you. Really a good opportunity for our 3 regions and beyond, of course. Francesco?
Yes, I think it's very useful what you are doing. And if I could say complete, I would say that I invite you to continue and to close the loop, to make it really tangible what you have done, to complete, to realize the project, to really show what is really the results. Because we know that when there is a game change like this, you need to have a story, and a story that is as much as tangible and clear to convince other policymakers, other public administration to work on this. That's what we are trying to do, and the more we do, the easier to convince the other to join the group of innovators. So I wish you very good continuation.
Thanks a lot, Francesco. Ryan?
Yeah, no doubt. I think there's an open invitation if you're in Brussels to come and meet with our members. I think they would be very interested to hear some of the things that you've presented today. And actually on the communication side, really fantastic from Transform. We will be taking some of those videos back with us, I think, and sharing them as inspirational stories to our members. And again, it's no surprise that the 3 regions have cities or a number of cities in the cities mission. So great to see, and hopefully that can kind of flow in from one project to another program and priority.
Thank you, Ryan. Ramojus?
I share the view of the panelists and colleagues. Of course, such projects, they build the foundation of the better policy making, and in many regions and in the European Commission as well. So by all means, please share the outcomes. Please keep the thinking, the stream, the direction alive, and looking for possible engagements in the future.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to all our panelists for this last session of the final conference Transform. Thank you. Thank you very much. It is time to conclude, and so this is the time to remind you that, of course, all our resources and tools developed during the 3 years of the project are available on the website. And so you will find our ebook, all the deliverables, all the report, the policy brief, a new policy brief that we are preparing for the conclusion of the project, and the 3 executive summary of the strategic roadmaps to be inspired in our website. And of course, you can contact us and all the cluster leaders and cluster partners to have more information and more details on the 3 experiences. Before closing up the final conference, of course, I need to thank a lot of people. First of all the citizens engaged in our 3 clusters exercise. For us, this experience was not just an exercise of citizen engagement, so we are really glad and honored to have the opportunity to work, talk to, listen to all the citizens involved in our activities in the 3 regions. And of course, we need to thank all the stakeholders for the pilots in Catalonia and Brussels capital region, and all of the experts that have joined us in Lombardy for the participatory processes, because of course, without them, nothing was possible. So a really big thanks also to them. And personally, as coordinator, I would like to thank all the partners in crime of this amazing project. We have still a little bit of work to be done, but we are almost at the end of this fantastic journey, and I really would like to thank all of you for these 3 years together. And I really need to thank also all my team, especially for this crazy final rush to organize the final conference. So the Bassetti Foundation team, all the guys from Bassetti Foundation, Francesco, Mara, Tommaso, Cecilia, and especially, really, my partner in crime at Bassetti Foundation, Anna Pellissone, project manager of the project, and other 3 key people for organizing this final conference. Francesca, who took care of the chat online, so her role was really important to share all the links of the activities in Transform, but also all the speakers and panelists involved. Camilla for a smooth organization of these crazy 2 days and all the craziness before arriving to this. And Valentina, who was our graphic professional colleague to produce the amazing roadmaps. So, and then I can, of course, only thank all the participants today in person in Milan, and the participant online. Thanks you for many thanks for joining us in these 2 days. The final conference of Transform will be over for the online participants. Of course, we have another moment for the people in person, the final poster session for the participant who decided to share their RRI, citizen engagement, multi-stakeholder engagement experiences together with us in these 2 days, bringing with them their initiative through a poster. Thanks a lot. Have a lovely continuation of the day.
Could I have sound on the, yeah. So before we close and go to lunch, I've been mandated to make an important addendum to the thanks that have been given. So, and I guess you're guessing who that thank would go to. So Transform is coming to a close. I wouldn't say it has been smooth sailing all the time. just as the ship was leaving the port, there were even a wave of pandemic that hit Europe, and first of all and hardest in your own region. So in times like this, it's incredibly important to have a steady captain on the ship. And I speak on behalf of the entire consortium that we could not have had a better captain, steady, rigorous, energetic, and full of care. So thank you very much, Angela, for these wonderful 3 years.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, guys. I'm not sure if it was always a solid guide. It was a guide in a way, and thank you a lot for this collaboration and this amazing journey during these 3 years. Thanks a lot, guys. So we are in Italy. It's time to have food again.